Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there and welcome back to your show, You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com. And today I have a guest. Her name is Fiona Eckersley. Hi, Fiona.
Hey, hi. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. Great to have you here at the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. So now for the listeners, let me give you a little bit of her background so you can get to know her. Fiona is a confidence coach, a divorce recovery expert, motivational speaker, and best-selling author of The Fearful to Fabulous, Unlock Your Power, Move On and Drive After Midlife Divorce. Before launching her own business, Fiona was a teacher, wife, and a mother of four. Finding herself divorced at age 44, she went through years of missteps, eventually learning to overcome her own self-limiting negative thoughts, emotional blocks, and incorrect beliefs. Today, Fiona is a certified coach who utilizes her own journey to help clients gain confidence and blast through their own fears and challenges in order to move from fearful to fabulous. Wow, that's awesome. So let me ask you this. It seems like you have a something great going on for yourself, but it wasn't like that for you before this, right? Based on what I just shared with the audience. Tell me more about your background before pre-divorce.
Pre-divorce. Well, pre-divorce, there's a lot. I grew up in the north of England in a very working class town. My mom worked in a factory. I have two older sisters, and only one in my family actually still to have gone to college. I went to teacher training college, and after that, I actually went to work in Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa, and I was teaching for a charity there. And that's actually where I met my ex-husband. He was in the Peace Corps. Anyway, long story short, after I'd been home for a year to get my final teaching degree, I got a job in New York. It was a culture shock for me, actually, more of a culture shock than working in Africa, because I was working in a very prestigious private school, and from the background I was at, that was not, anything right. I was used to. But anyway, eventually, I married this guy. We moved out to the suburbs in Connecticut, and it was different for me, but I was doing okay. We had 4 kids. We were married for 17 years. We'd been together for 22, and it was really that idealistic, here I am in the suburbs, stay-at-home mother. I'd actually just started part-time teaching again because my youngest was in kindergarten. Okay. But, country club, the whole deal. And I thought my life was like this wonderful fairy tale that somehow I'd stumbled on, and everything was great. And then one day my husband walked in and he said to me, I need to tell you something. I go, what? He said, yeah, I don't love you anymore and I'm filing for divorce. Wow. And that whole life that I thought that I was living right. and everything instantly. And, we did end up getting divorced. My kids were, how old were they at the time? They were 8, 11, 13, and 15. And this came as a blow to them because they had no idea. I mean, we never argued. There was nothing going on. They didn't know. We were the perfect family. So that resulted in their personal issues that some of them are still resounding. Yeah. I got divorced, and I kind of spiraled down into all those things that you do when something like that happens. And, too much eating, too much drinking, too much partying, crazy relationship with the very worst person in the world that she's been with. And eventually after like 3 years or so, I found myself with no job, no, I mean, I had some money coming in from him, but no job, no relationship, terrified. And I basically looked in the mirror and I'm like, who is this person? This is not that same woman who like just took the initiative, went to college, went to live in Africa, got a job in New York. Like, who am I? I don't even know. Like, what am I doing? And it was kind of the rock bottom for me, and it's like, the way I put it is when you get to that point where the really bad stuff in your life is outweighing that scary part of stepping out of your comfort zone and actually doing something about it. I was there. That was my tipping point. And I've always been very independent, basically because I did a lot of looking after myself since I was about 5. But I needed to finally say, I can't do this on my own. And I reached out for help, and I got my own coach. And through that, I started coaching myself, and I met amazing people. And, the rest is history. It was like an upward trajectory from there. And I would say that now I can look back and I can say, honestly, like, it was the best thing in the world that happened to me, because I am not the same person as I was 10 years ago. And I hope better than I was 10 years ago, and less angry, calmer, able to look at other people's points of views, which I probably didn't do before, very judgmental before. So my view is that there's so many women out there right now who are struggling with this feeling of there's something wrong with them. They're inadequate, all the stuff that's been put into them. And they either stay where they are because it's too difficult to move out, or it takes them years like me. And I don't see why people should struggle like that.
Right. Yeah. And so it seems like, for you, before getting divorced, so you were in England and in different countries, right? And so that's when you were a teacher and doing all the teaching. And so one of the things that I was wondering, and I think you answered that, is you decided to become a coach and venture into this new life of yours because of the divorce, because you were first working on yourself, and then through that you found that journey, right?
Exactly.
So, and let me ask you something. I think a lot of people, go through that, and you mentioned that, right? That people feel like they're stuck in that moment or in that relationship or whatever the case may be for numerous reasons. And I could only imagine that could be very hard to move away from that. Like, you mentioned it yourself. You were getting to drinking, you were getting to doing things that obviously was not serving you any purpose, yet that was kind of your scapegoat to go to when that happened. Is that something you see a lot with people where, they fall into some habits that, perhaps are not...
that's actually one of the biggest things. It's like, because we, human beings, it's amazing the way that we're able to we're protecting ourselves, but we're not, right?
Okay.
You're that little monkey brain, that lizard brain, or whatever you want to call it back there, is saying to you, listen, stay safe, don't try something new, because God, it could be worse. Maybe you did all that stuff yesterday and you're still here, you better not take a chance, right? That's what's really going on. Is like, we're scared of taking that step out of the comfort zone because we just don't know what's going to happen. So in order to hide, we develop all these habits, right, to comfort ourselves, which is what human beings do. I mean, it's what people are going through right now. It's, the snacks and I can stay away from them myself right now, actually.
Right.
But it's what we do to protect ourselves. And it becomes easier to stay there than take that step out for a lot of people. I mean, I know, for example, growing up, my father was an abusive alcoholic. My mother was a battered woman. There was a lot going on there. It never occurred to her to get out because she didn't believe she could, right? It wasn't that she liked the situation she was in. She just didn't see another option. And I think a lot of women who are not in such an extreme position even, I mean, I certainly wasn't in such an extreme position. I look back and I see a lot of problems in my marriage, and I'm glad that I am where I am now. But you're like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This, you don't feel like you're up for anything better.
Right.
You don't see an option. And when you don't see an option, or you think maybe it's your fault somehow, and this is what you deserve, that makes it difficult to get out.
So
And I think that's why a lot of people stay there.
right, and I think maybe it comes down to a few things. And again, I'm not an expert on this, and I can only assume, right, that it could also come down to acceptance, self-confidence, and like you said, just you're playing the, it's my fault. We're in this situation because of me. Therefore, like you said, this is the result of that, right? I think more so it becomes down to the fact that. The acceptance, and if maybe you feel like you're not accepted by your husband, and you're blaming yourself, and that self-confidence become at a much lower point, that the only thing that might comfort you is creating a blanket around all this negativity, whether it's drinking, whether it's not taking care of yourself. It's like, well, who's gonna look at me, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I think that's probably a lot of the challenges that many people are going now. If you're more in an abusive relationship, even so, I've talked to people where they have been in an abusive relationship, yet again, for whatever reason, they decide mentally to say, yeah, this is not what I want, yet I'm not gonna find anything better outside, and sometimes they end up drowning themselves into that. And so that definitely becomes a challenge. And so how, maybe you share a few tips or things that you can tell the audience that might be going through something to that extent, whether it's a verbal abuse, mental abuse, whatever abuse, or even just not a stable relationship that might not be for them.
Right. Well, the first thing, I mean, the hardest part is believing that you don't need to put up with this, right? Everybody is not living like this. There is more out there for you. Some people just don't want to be on their own. They'll put up with it because they don't want to be alone. But I think the biggest thing that I do with women, which is not really what they come to me for, but is what they really need, is we learn to love yourself. Because if you don't really like the person you are, and you don't understand that you deserve to be treated well, you're going to put up with this stuff. So the first thing to do is, I'm trying to think of a good tip that you can do right now. Make a list. If you feel like you're in a relationship where, oh, but he loves me and it's my fault, I'm not doing enough, right? Write down, put a list on one side. Put at the top of the list, you put something like, what does it mean to love somebody, right? And then write down all the things that you think it means to love somebody. And then on the other side, you can put down a list of like, how am I treated? And compare those two lists, right? And then maybe you'll see that perhaps the way that you're being treated is not by somebody who loves you or by somebody who deserves you, but by somebody who is just there, right? And is using you to help for whatever. I'm not saying those people are bad. It's like we all have our own baggage and our own issues. And I find that, they're not evil, these men or these women, because women do it to men too, by the way. I just happen to work with women. Yeah. They're not evil people. They just have their own issues, and they don't understand what they're doing necessarily all the time. Sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. So first of all, look at that and then say, oh, okay, well, there's a disparity here. Something's wrong here. Okay. And then as long as you're not in an abusive relationship, maybe you could open a dialogue, and say, this is for people who are still married, obviously, this is what I've been thinking about, this is what I've noticed. Why don't you make your list, honey? And let's have a look and let's see what we can do, to come to terms here and see if we can be more on that loving list than the way I am treated list. Bring the two together, make them come together in some way. That's what you can do if you're in a relationship where you're able to talk and he's not going to, right, abuse you or something. If you're still together, if you're already separated, I actually do talk to a lot of divorced women who are still, their ex-husband left them or they left him, but they still say, oh, but I still love him. Right. And that's kind of, for the most part, it's one of those looking back with rose-colored glasses things. And I asked them to do the same thing again. Like, what is love, and how were you treated, and does it match up? It's the same thing. You could do the same thing, but that's more for a mindset for you to understand what's going on from that. Yeah. It's society today. not so much now for younger girls, but for like 40s, 50s and older, you were kind of brought up to help people, right? And a lot of women, what I find is we're putting our needs, our wants behind what everybody else needs. The kids,
Mm.
the husband, work, the dogs, right? Even
Yeah,
me, I
right.
got two dogs. One
Yeah.
of them's making a noise right now. I'm sorry. But it's like, you do all that because we're made to think that when we do something for ourselves, we're being selfish, right? And that's not the case. When you're doing something for yourself and you're feeling good about yourself, that actually spreads out to other people because you feel better about yourself.
Right.
You're more likely to be less snappy with the kids or whatever, right? Um, so I think that as a society, that's something that needs to change a little bit, but I'm doing my part for the 40s and up.
Yeah, yeah, no,
So,
definitely. A few things that you mentioned, and I think I love the idea of putting together and doing a comparison. I really love that. I never heard that. One thing that I also have heard that might be useful is, I think is more so if you're divorced, not necessarily if you're in a relationship, but if you're divorced or you're looking for that relationship, right? It's good to put a list of items that you would want on a person, right? Whatever that might be. She loves me, or he loves me unconditionally, or something like that. So you do this list of things that you want on that person, and so I believe that you attract what you put out, right? And so the love.
oh, exactly. Actually, it's funny because I'm actually writing my second book right now,
Oh, cool.
and
Yeah.
it's before all this started. I planned what I was going to write, and it's based on dating after divorce.
Mm,
And there's a lot goes into it. First thing I say is don't, right? Not immediately. You got, because there's
yeah.
so much preparation to do. But that's what I'm saying, is because if you have this feeling that you are not good enough, or you're going to put up with being treated that way, that's the message you're putting out there.
Right. Right.
Unconsciously, you don't know, but everything that you say and everything that you post and everything that you do, that's what's putting out. That's why women, and I did it myself, believe me,
Mm-hmm.
you end up in the same relationship. In my case, mine was worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same type of guy. You don't, because that's what you're putting out there. That's what we do. So until you fixed your inner dialogue, you're not ready to go to a new relationship. But yes, definitely, you need to write down, once you've got to that place where you know what you need to write down your expectations
Yep.
and what your red flags are.
Mm-hmm.
And what, more importantly, what are your boundaries?
Yep.
Because boundaries is they're very easy to lower.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
once you lower it once, you're going to go down a little bit more. Well,
Right.
maybe that
Yeah.
you need to be able to stick firm to those boundaries. Exactly.
No, yeah, definitely, and with that, I mean, obviously, raise your standards. Just make sure that you have a good amount of boundaries, because again, you want to make sure that you don't lower them. And so with this list too, one of the things that you can do is, once you have that list, you can look at every single item of those lists, and the first thing you need to look at is, am I that person for myself, right? In other words,
Oh, perfect.
because you want to make sure that, again, you're going to attract that. So not only are you looking for that on somebody, you're looking at that for yourself, because once you have that inner love, and you're taking care of yourself in all those different aspects, that's where you're attracted. That's what you're going to have. So if you want someone that is not a non-smoker, yet you're a smoker, you need to stop that habit, because again, you're attracting that, right? So you want to be able to look at that from that perspective, and I think that'll be a good way for people to work on that. I did that list myself, and I'm constantly working on that for myself, right?
Right.
The other thing that I was going to mention is, uh, coming out of also a long relationship myself, I realized that being in a journey of myself by myself is probably the best journey that I could have taken, because it's given me the time and the ability to work on myself now and be prepared for that next step in life. It's not the end of anything, right? It's definitely the beginning of something else. And sometimes when you realize that the best journey you can take is by yourself, because you can prepare yourself for something better and greater, things start flowing better in your life as you move forward, right?
Yes, exactly. And that, spoiler alert, if any, for the end of my book, that's the last chapter of my book. It's
Oh,
okay to be on your own, right?
yeah.
It's because once you're comfortable, and it's actually easier to find somebody else, once you're really happy and you're on your own and you're like, this is okay, whether this works out or not, right? You're open to love, but if it doesn't come, it's okay because I have a full life and I'm happy with myself. That's when you're probably most likely to meet somebody.
Yeah.
Because you haven't got that needy grabbing energy, I guess,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying. And or I mean, you can meet somebody earlier on, but it might not necessarily be somebody you want to be with.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so, and I think one thing that you mentioned, obviously you're focusing on the 40 and above, and obviously there's a particular reason for that. Now, do you feel that is more difficult when people are going through that midlife crisis, or are getting divorced after 40, for people to get back into a more stable themselves, like more stable situations themselves, or because obviously younger generation, you can see they're always probably dating and not dating and so on and so forth. But when you're in a relationship and you've been married for quite some time, and like you said, you're probably thinking of, this is going to be that relationship that I'm going to be from this point forward, right? Yet you come to realize that at the age of 40 or above, something happens and you guys get divorced. Like, how would my question to that is, how do you deal with that, right? How do you deal with something at that age of getting divorced? Because sometimes I feel like if I'm 40 or above and I'm coming out of a relationship, it's like, that's it, it's the end of the world, I'm never going to be able to do anything with my life in a relationship perspective. Is that more difficult to deal with, or what is your...
Yeah, it is. And that's why, I mean, breakups at any age they're hard. Believe me, I've been through,
Right.
through a
Yeah.
few from 18 on, right? But it's the loss of identity, I think, that you find when you're older. If you've been with somebody for 20, 30 years, you're his partner or her partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're the kid's mother or father. And this applies to men equally. I mean, I'll work with men. It just happens most of my clients are women. It applies equally. It's like, especially for men, because they don't often get custody of the kids, which makes it even more difficult, really, because then suddenly they're really not the father, right? They're not coming home to the kids. All of this evaporates, and it's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah. And it's like, well, how am I going to find another relationship? I'm old. I've been with that person for so long. I know with women, there's a lot of body image issues, right? Oh my God, how am I going to get naked in front of somebody else? I had 4 kids. I put all this weight on. Oh my gosh, nobody will want me. You're set in your ways, right? You meet somebody else and they got their own ways, and you're not really prepared to change what you like to do. There's so many things. And it is hard because you also, when you're that age, if you're going to meet somebody else of that age, they're also bringing all their own damage and their own baggage into this relationship. So weeding through that is very difficult. And so many women I know they're like, honestly, I read these things and like, all men suck. I hate men. Men are horrible. I mean, condemning an entire, like, half of the population, it was less than half, but the other half of the race is like, you can't do that because you have to be open and you have to understand what's going on. So yes, it's difficult. A lot of women were stay at home, like I was a stay at home mother. So my teaching career was basically like stalled. So that there's like, what am I going to do with my life? I haven't worked for 15, 20 years, right? There's all of that going on. A lot of women have that issue to work out. And there's age discrimination, right? We all know when we go for a job, trying to get a new job is difficult when you're that age. So yeah, all of that comes together to just this ball of like loss of self-confidence that will just put you in this negative space. And the moment you're in that negative space, it's really hard to move forward.
Wow. Yeah, no, I can only imagine. And so I'm assuming that that's part of the reason why you decided to write your book, right? Fearful to Fabulous. So tell me more about your book.
Basically, my book walks people through the 7 steps that I go through with my clients, the 7 basic steps that I work through with my clients. So the first one is, you got to stop focusing on your ex and what you thought your life was supposed to be. right? We're all caught up in this. My life was, and I'm talking about that right now too, because I've slightly shifted my focus these days because, you know, there's so many other things going on. But it's like, this was supposed to be happening. It's like, well, guess what? Maybe it wasn't, right? It wasn't supposed to. Stop focusing on that, because you can't, because it's not going to. This is focus on now, right? You've really got to focus and understand your real financial realities right now, which a lot of people don't. It's easier to stick your head in the sand and not deal with it. But sometimes, even if it's really bad, taking control actually makes you feel better. Like if you go through your budget and you're like, oh man, I can't afford to do that thing, that's actually very empowering. To understand that I'm going to do this instead of this, and you're making a decision, that's very empowering. So you got to figure your financial realities. Eliminate those bad habits. That's another thing, because there's so many things that we do to make us feel better. Reframing your emotions. Forgiveness and gratitude are the biggest tools that you can have to help you move on from anything. And even right now, in the crazy times we're living in right now, those are the two biggest things that, you know, I'm focusing on. But a lot of women that I talk to are incredibly angry from what happened to them, and not necessarily always at the other person. A lot of it is focused at themselves. Wow. So we need to reframe those emotions. Get rid of that inner voice, that inner dialogue that you, even things like when you put your jeans on and you can't quite fasten them, and all the names you call yourself, right?
Right. Yeah. You're
listening to what you say to yourself. And the more you say bad things to yourself, the more you start to believe that, the lower your confidence goes. You want to look at the new relationship dynamics. And I don't just mean romantic relationships, like friends. A lot of people find that their friends disappear because I guess they weren't very good friends to start with. That happened to me. The relationship with your children is going to be different. Relationship with his family, again, mine disappeared. Your family, maybe they don't approve of divorce. Maybe they think it's your fault. Hey, you should have tried harder with your husband, right? You know, so you got to look at all those relationships and see how that's affecting you and how you can react to that. And I think the last thing that I focus on, once we've got all of that under control, is now you need to say, okay, that's great. What are my goals? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do with my life? And what am I passionate about? Because really finding a passion in life is the most important thing to loving your life. So finding your passion, setting your goals, and then figuring out how you can get there. And that's kind of the last thing.
No, definitely. And one thing that you mentioned, and I want to kind of emphasize that for those that are watching us and listening to us, is that words do matter, right? You know, and so what you tell yourself, or what you tell even other people, or even it could be projected where you're talking to somebody or somebody's projecting something to you. You got to be able to rectify and correct those words and that message, because the subconscious mind is listening to that and is taking that. And so therefore it is very, very critical that you focus on only positivity. And that's one thing that I tell a lot of the people that I work with, and some of my clients too, is that you have to be careful on the words that you use, because they're so critical and they're very impactful into your life. And just telling yourself all this negative stuff definitely is not going to help. So one thing that I started doing myself, and I do this pretty much every day when I go to sleep and then when I wake up, is I actually tell myself I love myself, that I appreciate myself, and I'm thankful for myself. Like, and I literally look at myself in the mirror and I say those things, because again, sometimes we're waiting for somebody to give you that feedback, or waiting for somebody to provide that, right? So why not do it to yourself? Because there's nobody else that can do that better than yourself, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the exercises that I give my clients is exactly that. And it is the hardest. I've noticed this is the hardest one. I ask them to look in the mirror and look themselves in the eye and say, I love you. And it's amazing how, like, it's really hard. And there's no one there. It's not like there's anybody else there to judge you. It's all from in here. I mean, really, you know, what I do with my clients, they come to me about divorce. I mean, I've had people for other things too, but that's my main. It's got nothing to do with the divorce. Whatever is going, we thought maybe about that the first week. It's about everything else that's gone on in their life up until that point. The divorce is a tipping point, right? And it's all about the limiting beliefs they have. You know, I mean, the woman, I had a client who, beautiful woman, really got a great job, in charge of a bunch of people at work, but she'd never gone to college. And her boss would call her at 9 o'clock at night and ask her to do something. And this is like an office. This was not curing cancer, right? And I said, why are you allowing him to do that? And she said, well, I'm so scared he's going to fire me. You know, these people that work for me, they all went to college. I'm not doing I'm not good enough. I'm not clever enough. Like, that was basically her dialogue. And I said, he gave you the job. Clearly he thinks you're good at it, right? So we went through all of that stuff, but then we get deeper into it, and I come to find out she has a sister, and her father was doing best intentions, like it wasn't negative, but used to say to her sister used to say to my client all the time, "You're so pretty. Oh my gosh, you're so pretty. You're so beautiful." But then she would hear him say to her sister, "You are so smart. What a great job you did. You're really clever." Now, in her mind, as a little girl, what that translated to is, you're not very smart. And she's carried that. The woman's 56 years old. She's carried that her entire life, that she isn't smart enough.
Yeah.
From that interaction that she used to hear.
Yeah,
and this is what we do. And these are what you've got to expel, right? And replace it with a better dialogue.
Yeah, and those are those installed programs that were put on you, whether they were intentional or not. And again, it just stays with you, right? And it follows you. So that's why I always say it's very, very important to make sure that you get in the right type of programming, because you just never know what that's gonna do to you, even without you noticing them. Again, you go about your life, and before you know it, that comes back to you somehow. And that's a perfect example of that. I love the message that you have here for the listeners. And again, you touched on that as one of your number one first steps. And the loss of identity and confidence that many feel in midlife, and especially after divorce, is not one is to define the rest of your life. Instead of focusing on the past or what was supposed to be, you can be excited for life now and for the future. I really, really love that. Don't let that define you, and focus on what's going to be the future. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, in terms of what are some things that again we can do to really focus on that, from a future perspective, right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, probably myself included at the time, I think that you look at a failed relationship, a failed marriage, or I'm using the word failed, a divorce, a relationship that didn't work out. You're looking at it as a failure. And you take that on like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. And what did I do wrong? Well, yeah, of course we all, honestly, it's never all the other person, right? It's like you were there, you would take responsibility too. Okay. Even if it was a horrible relationship from their point of view, there are things that you could have done to get yourself out, right? So we need to take responsibility for that. And we can't blame everybody else for everything. You can't be a victim. Even if you were a victim, you have to say, okay, that happened. What do I learn from that? Really, everything that happens is you just have to say, that happened. What can I learn? And then once you've figured out what you now know that you don't want to do anymore, that's going to help a stepping stone to the next thing that you want to do, right? That's going to help in your next relationship. That's going to help in any kind of interacting with people. That's going to help in you saying, okay, I made these mistakes. It's okay. I'm human. So now what am I going to do to move on from that? So I think that's the biggest thing, is like looking at everything as a learning experience rather than a failure or a disaster, or, and the other thing is, like, you have to understand that you cannot control other people's behavior.
Yeah. Right.
So many women I just want to know why he did that. I just need him to tell me why he did that. I need to understand this. And I say to them, he's never going to tell you. Because he probably doesn't know himself, right? People do what they do. They have their own thing going on. But what I can tell you is it has nothing to do with you. Nothing. It's got everything to do with them. You can't control somebody else's behavior. All you can control is your reaction to it, right? And you got to get over that idea of closure or figuring out where you went wrong. It's just like, okay, he did what he did because he has his own issues. So what can I now do? So I think that's the best way to look at it, is just understanding that you're in control now.
Right.
You're in control. You don't need somebody else to tell you what to do. You don't need to worry about somebody else's judgment.
Right. Yeah. And
That's the biggest story.
right. And you're one thing that I tell people is you're either growing or you're learning. There's no failures, right? So you're either that the learning is those lessons, right? And with that, there's another point that I want to bring up to that is that again, a lot of times and I say that myself because when I went through my relationship, I was also hung up on thinking about, well, what is that person thinking of the things that I've done, the awful things that I might have done or not done, whatever the case may be. And you get hung up on that thought process, thinking that somebody else is thinking, what you did or didn't do, when in reality, they're not even thinking of you. They're probably already moved on. And so we're putting ourselves in a situation where we're sabotaging our own lives by staying in a negative state of mind, or by thinking, what is my extra relationship thinking of me, or what I could have done different or better. And again, if you try to find that closure, there's probably never going to be that closure, at least the answer you're looking for. Just accept what it is, and know that the closure is that you're no longer together. Now, what can I do to be able to move forward? And I think that can probably empower people to start taking those small steps to the next level, right?
Right. It's like, I put it this way, and I was totally like this before, and occasionally now and then, when you go to a stop sign, you're driving your car, or somebody cuts you off in the car, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you spend the next 10 minutes having this conversation in your head, what you would say to that person who cut you off in that, and you've got this whole dialogue going. Meanwhile, that other person went up, they probably don't even know they cut you off.
Right.
Right? You've just spent 10 minutes to half an hour getting yourself all worked up and upset and bringing all your hormones out of whack and doing all these crazy things to yourself. And that person doesn't even know they did it. And that's it. It's not the same thing, but it is the same thing.
It is. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The concept.
It's a waste of time. It's a waste of your worry. It's a waste of your energy. So many women I know who, they're on these dating sites and somebody cuts them off, or somebody says something mean or whatever, and they get so upset and they're like, I'm going to write back to him and I'm going to say this, this, and this. And I go, why? Just block it. Done.
Yeah.
You're done. You think he cares? You
Right.
think, who's in pain there? Who's extending their emotional energy? Who's getting all worked up about it? You are.
Right.
You don't care.
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Right.
That's it. And it's not the same. It is the same thing, but slightly different. It's like the whole forgiveness thing. It's like, you're not forgiving somebody else because you're saying it's okay what they did. You're forgiving them because it's releasing you from that negative energy.
Yep.
And that's the best way to move forward as well.
Yeah. Let me ask you, are there any habits or things that you do now that help you stay in a positive state of mind? Maybe you have anything that you do, on a daily basis?
Yeah, I would definitely say that meditation, and you don't have to be like a great guru, right? You could sit down for 5 minutes and listen to one of these things on YouTube, right? Just quieting your mind for 5 minutes every day is going to make a huge difference. It's just the practice of breathing more regularly. And it sounds crazy, we all breathe, right? But like intentional breathing,
right?
Just to bring that level of anxiety down. If you do it longer, that's great, but don't feel like you have to be, sitting there for 20 minutes with your eyes closed and your mind completely erased, because nobody does. In fact, Chopra doesn't do that, right? So just I don't think he does anyway. I don't think anybody can do it. So just 5 minutes a day, just some kind of meditation. And it's nice in the morning, but whenever you get a chance. The other thing that I always advise people to do is, even if it's like rotten weather and it's cold out, if you can just stand outside for 5 minutes and look up at the sky and like breathe that in, that's going to make you feel better. Like, just get outside. I know we're all trapped in right now, but we can walk out, we can stand on our front steps, we can, I have to walk I have to walk my dogs like 4 times a day. So I
Yeah.
have to get outside.
Right.
But when I get up in the morning and my first thought is, oh, I got to walk the dogs now. It's actually great. The moment I get outside, I feel so much better.
Hmm.
Right. So I would say do that. Those two things are the biggest things I do. Move. Don't sit on if you're watching Netflix, get up at least every episode and walk around and do something.
Okay.
Right. If
Yeah.
you're binge
Yeah.
watching, you got to do some kind of movement, because it makes a difference. It makes a difference to the way you feel about yourself. And I would say in these days of being trapped inside, it's so easy for us to stay in your pajamas all day and not wash your hair and not whatever. And you're like, doesn't matter, nobody sees me. But honestly, getting up, putting on like regular clothes, if you want to put makeup on, put makeup on. If you're a woman and you wear makeup anyway,
Yeah.
because it makes a difference to the way that you feel about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? The more that you sort of give up and divulge into and I'm saying this now for the times we're living in now, but I've had this experience with women that I've worked with in the past. They don't care anymore. They wear the same sweatpants every day. It's like, if you don't care about the way that you look and what you're projecting, even though nobody's going to see you, it's going to make you feel bad about yourself. So I would definitely get up and make some effort for the day.
Yeah. No, I
I
love
guess
that.
those
I
are the
definitely
three
love
biggest
that.
things, like four biggest things I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know. I love that. I definitely have some stuff myself too that I tend to do every day. Just it gets me in that state of mind. And when I started my journey of being an entrepreneur and doing, leaving my corporate job, I had to change a lot of the things. One of that is mind shifts and the way I do things and how I do things. And I think that's been very powerful to get you in that positive state of mind and really attack anything that you want. And a lot of times when you do things early in the morning, you have you're very excited, you're happy, and then your day is gonna turn out to be that, right? As
Right.
opposed to doing it in the middle of the day or some other different times. So if people wanted to find you, where can they find you?
So my website is findfabulouswithfiona.com. Findfabulouswithfiona.com. On there, they can find out how to contact me. They can actually, one of the pages, Fearful to
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous book, they can actually, if they want to, download a free copy of my book.
Oh, awesome.
You can buy it if you want, but,
Yeah,
but
go
you
to
can go on there
Amazon.
and download a free copy. So that's the best way. And if they want to contact me, that's on there too.
Right. And I know you do also like public speaking. So you work with groups and also with individual people, or just on a group setting. How does that work?
You know what? For the most part, I've done one-on-one
Okay.
coaching. I'm now that things are changing, I'm
Right.
possibly, moving to more of a group setting, but to be seen,
Right.
to be figured out.
To be
But yeah,
determined. To be determined for
yeah.
sure. Awesome. And then one last question for you. You've given us a lot of great tips and a lot of great ideas. So, hopefully this won't be as difficult. If you had one tip that you can leave the listeners with that they can start utilizing today to overcome anything in their life, what would that be?
Oh, that's easy. Actually, I didn't mention it.
Okay.
Gratitude. And
Mm,
this is, I would say gratitude. I forgot to mention that before I get up every day to walk the dogs,
mm,
I lie in bed before I open my eyes or I start reading the BBC on my phone.
yep.
I lie there and I try and think of at least 3 to 5 things that I am grateful for.
Mm,
Right. And that seems really difficult right now. People are in so much problem, with the
yeah.
work and staying home, and we're worried about everything. There's something that you're grateful for. Even if it's like, I always joke around, my older dog has a problem with incontinence sometimes. So, sometimes my gratitude is, I'm so happy Jackson didn't pee on the floor today. Right.
Mm,
It can be anything. The
right.
sun's shining. It doesn't have to be some big thing. But if you can look at your life and find something to be grateful for, you're going to find more.
Right.
We get what we look for, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my biggest tip.
Nice. I know. I love that. I definitely love that. So, Fiona, thank you so much for being here. I really had a great time speaking to you and having you on the show. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great speaking to you.
Thank you. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Make sure that you check us out on Spreaker.com. Go to YouTube.com. Also, any platform for a podcast, make sure you check us out. share it, like it, subscribe. Make sure you comment on this interview. Buy her book at Amazon.com. And until next time, see you at the next episode. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.